Okay, so here again, I'm going to do one of these varieties of video because for a long time, people, um, I have been watching many interesting videos that um, I think would be really, really interesting for many of you, the viewer. But I'm not the sort of person that would mother you and copy and paste all these videos and put them in the description and tell you, all about them and all that. You are adults, and I've got better things to do. But when I see something which is very poignant to me, I will, from this point forward, have something to say about it. So this guy here, Alex O'Connor, and his channel is Within Reason, and he is exceedingly bright and uh, he's a non-believer, and so he's very secular in his thoughts, but he is in actual fact looking so deeply into the Bible, and he even has a couple of degrees, one of them in philosophy and the other one in theos- uh, theosophy theosophy um, religious studies. Theosophy is religious studies and philosophy, and so I suppose it is that really. But I think it's theology that he's got his degree in. So I would, well, for sure, I would have him down for being a theosophist. Who is interested in religion and all that sort of spiritual stuff, as well as being a philosopher. So anyway, he's at a debate and he's just doing his intro, and he's saying why he just can't get his head round there, in fact, being a god, because he has never encountered anything which has indicated to him that there is. And he runs through all of his hypotheses and experience and his level of study and the things he's looked into. So I'm going to play this video for you people, because it's very, very interesting as to how it is that we think very, very differently. And it's entirely premised, or at least a very large part of it is premised in our experience as human beings. Some of us don't have any spiritual experiences at all. Some of us have very little or none in the way of phenomenological experiences. But those of us that do have, then of course we have a very, very different perspective on life. So let me play this video and I'll continue then with my dialogue.
Such people actively want to be convinced of God's existence and would jump at the chance of entering into a relationship with him if they thought that he did.
Now, it paused. Oh, it seems to have caught up now. I just watched the video count down at the bottom side of the screen, and it had paused. So I don't know how much of what I was saying was recorded. I'm hoping it all was recorded. So anyway, let us go.
But no matter how hard they search, they simply find no answer forthcoming from the heavens. And this is the non-resistant non-believer. Formally, then, Schellenberg's problem of divine hiddenness can be stated as follows. Premise 1, if there is a God, he is perfectly loving, something I'm pretty sure Jonathan agrees with. Premise 2, if a perfectly loving God exists, non-resistant non-belief does not occur. Premise 3, non-resistant non-belief does occur. 4, therefore, no perfectly loving God exists, and the conclusion from the first premise is that therefore there is no God. A loving God, like the Christian God, would surely not refute any willing person from developing a relationship with him. And so if somebody is truly non-resistant and open to receiving God's grace, we should expect them to receive it. Thus, Schellenberg's assertion that if God exists, then non-resistant non-belief does not exist. The question, then, is there such a thing as non-resistant non-belief, a non-resistant non-believer? To which all I can really say is, nice to meet you. The last time I debated Jonathan a number of years ago, when I was just a few months out of being a teenager, I said that even if I found Christianity to be true.
So this dude, look, he's 20 years old here, and his uh, power of cognition is astronomical. He absorbs absolutely everything, and he picks upon all the subtle nuances and the contradictions and the deviances and the stuff that doesn't make any sense, and he brings his opponents to task. He's very bright. Why is this? Why are some people just exceptionally bright and have the ability to be able to cognize and retain information and store it in the appropriate places and bring it back exactly when they want to? Now, I'm going to be doing another video about this because the inability to be able to do this seems massively prolific these days. But, he has been through university with a couple of degrees, and so he's been through the same farming indoctrination structure of modern society, and yet he hasn't fallen foul of it. And so that's very, very interesting in itself, isn't it?
I still wouldn't want to worship the God that it promotes. I now, since then, have realized how irrational and self-defeating this assertion is, and stand before you today as an example of a non-resistant non-believer. I think it would be great if God existed. I really do. I would absolutely love to escape death. I would relish being the recipient of unconditional love. Less selfishly, I would love to be able to worship that which deserves to be worshipped. I just don't think it's true. Now, try as I might, look where I can, I find no response, no hint, nothing. I don't choose to disbelieve in God any more than I choose to disbelieve in aliens, despite how much I might want them to. So when faced with a psalm like Psalm 139, I'm overwhelmed with a sense not of beauty and consolation, but envy and disappointment. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? Where can I go, I should ask in response, to find it? Of course, you cannot know my heart. You can't know if I'm truly as non-resistant as I claim, but I hope that my actions here might betray me. As a Catholic child, I was once an altar boy. I would serve the altar of Mother Church every Sunday dressed in a white robe. In the time since then, I have, to put it mildly, been looking for God. I went to Catholic schools. I studied philosophy and theology at A levels. I made a career out of engaging with religious arguments. I have explored arguments from contingency, from fine-tuning, from motion, from mathematics, from irreducible complexity and the alleged resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. It may surprise my followers online to learn that at university I visited numerous churches on the invitation of various friends. I spent hours talking with religious friends until the sun rose again, if you like. I attended Bible groups regularly too, which might surprise people as well. And in fact, I still do attend such groups. Just recently, I agreed to embark on a series of study of the wisdom literature, specifically reading it again in the hopes that this time I might finally feel a divine presence seeping from between the lines. I moved into a house for a year with two devoutly Christian housemates with the express intention of seeing if the obvious truth of Christianity and theism that people like to talk about can be found in the minutiae of daily life. I have looked, in other words, in a great deal of places. I read Athanasius and Anselm. I read Augustine and Aquinas. I looked in Julian of Norwich and Catherine of Siena. I looked at the sociological origin of religious belief in Durkheim and Marx and Freud and Jung. I looked at religious experience in William James and Rudolf Otto. I've looked in the modern works of people like Ed Feser and Bill Craig and Michael Murray and Richard Swinburne and Alvin Plantinga. I've looked in poetry. I've looked in the Psalms. I've looked in Job. I've looked in Ecclesiastes. I've looked in Dostoevsky. I read C.S. Lewis. I listened to worship music. I prayed. I studied the gospel. I even got an actual degree in theology from a university. And nothing, not once, not nearly, not ever, not even briefly have I experienced anything that speaks to the existence of a God in the universe.
Now, that is quite amazing, isn't it? And the very, very profound part of what he's just said, people, if you were tuned into that, all the places where he has been looking have been in the exterior to himself. And God cannot be found in the exterior. Um, if you cannot find God within yourselves. And so it is said that in the book of Thomas, Jesus, one of Jesus' sayings says, God is within you and God is without of you. And so it is all around and it's in the cosmos is God. And so that's exactly my belief. It's kind of like idealism. It's the belief that everything is all mind, and I think it's the mind of God. And so that's very, very feasible. And that's why I'm a great adherent to lots of the sayings in the book of Thomas, as opposed to the Bible, which has been perverted and contorted in many, many ways, as far as I can gather. Now then, he looked in all of these places in the exterior with the greatest of minds, but he never mentioned that he's looked into his own psychology because he doesn't have a degree in psychology. He hasn't mentioned that he's a psychologist, albeit an amateur one. He has a degree in philosophy and a degree in theology, and so he's been looking in the wrong place, ladies and gentlemen. But we need to do that. We need to see what other people have said, what other people's experiences have been. And we can say, okay, well, it seems that many, many people have had religious and spiritual experiences, but I haven't. Why haven't I? What do I have to do to have a religious experience? And you can learn about that. And I speak about that in my book. And in many of my videos, I speak about how I had religious experiences and how I continue to have them. And I don't believe a single word which is written in the Old or New Testament. I don't have any adhesion or to those books at all. But I do consider that there is a Spinoza type God, a God which is the universe. Not necessarily that created the universe, that is the universe, because the universe is conscious and it's intelligent. And so, in that, in my estimation, then that equates to God as far as I can gather. And I have actually felt a lot of beautiful benevolence, and I felt evil and all different sorts of things anyway. But again, I write about all this stuff in my book, and I've spoken about it many times in my videos. But this is what Alex now is saying, that he searched high and low, and he hasn't found what everyone's been speaking about.
I think it's asking a lot of any atheist to seriously engage with a religion that he does not believe is true in any circumstances. But I think like I have gone above and beyond what can be reasonably expected of any atheist who wishes to entertain the God hypothesis, and for my efforts I have been awarded radio silence. The inescapable God of the NRSV, in other words, is for me the invisible God, or the inapproachable God, the deaf, distant God. The best account that I can give of this experience of complete and utter silence from deaf heaven is that all that truly exists to me is impersonal space and air and rocks. I know, it sucks. I'm sorry. It's a shame, but there's no need to cry about it. And nothing more. My question to Jonathan then
Elements of
is simple.
sarcasm as well.
How
That's
can
what I like
theism
about it,
account
because he's
for
addressing
this lived
Christians.
experience? How can it account, in other words, for non-resistant non-belief? And if atheism, and doesn't atheism, offer a better explanation at the very least? Am I a non-resistant non-believer? If so, what offers a best account or a better account of such a condition? A universe in which there is a loving God who does want to be my friend, but is for some reason refusing or hiding or toying with me? Or a universe without one? Or is there no such thing as a non-resistant non-believer, which is the only remaining option? Do we all secretly resist in some way or other? After desperately, in other words, trying to convince myself of God's existence for years and being left painfully unconvinced, will you just submit, as if to add insult to this spiritual injury, that this is in some way my fault? And if it is, then what could I have done differently? What should I be doing differently? What could I possibly have done differently given the course of my life? Now, assume for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, the alternative hypothesis of naturalism, of atheism, and ask if it provides a good account of non-resistant non-belief. And I think the answer is obvious. But it does get worse yet. You'll remember that my second fact that I said that I would bring up is the geographical predictability of religious belief. Not only does theism need to account for non-resistant non-belief, but also for the fact that such belief is unequally present across the globe. Stephen Mason has pointed out that the populace of Saudi Arabia is 95% Muslim and therefore 95% theistic, whereas the populace of Thailand is 95% Buddhist and therefore, at best, 5% theistic. How likely you are to be a theist, in other words, is intimately tied to the place in which you happen to be born. What can better explain this geographical spread? Theism or naturalism or atheism? Well, let's consider our two competing hypotheses. Could it be that God does exist, but that the Thai are simply naturally 20 times more likely to be resistant to belief in God than, say, the Saudis? Are they just naturally 20 times more stubborn or something? This seems implausible. This doesn't seem to be their fault. Okay.
So you get the point here. His videos are absolutely superb. But of course, it depends on what you're looking for and what your level of interest is and what your experience is and I suppose the level of intellect, whether you're ready or not for this sort of stuff. But like Alex, at that point in his life, a very devout atheist, only one which is open and willing to be introduced to some sort of a god because he likes the idea of it. Now, as far as my spirituality goes, I started reading the Bible when the Jehovah's Witnesses came round to my door and had a chat with me and left me with some books and then ultimately a Bible. So I read that Bible in its entirety over a 6-month period. And then 20 years later, I read the exact same Bible when I was living in Ghana in Western Africa in 42 days. And I had no idea why I was reading it. I found it very, very boring, frustrating. And quite frankly, I thought it was a pile of crap. And mostly I still do. But since that time, I have been sucked into watching thousands and thousands of Christian slanted debates and all different sorts of other spiritual and religious debates and reading different books and on and on and on. And I've been deeply immersed in it. And I began to be immersed in it before I had any of my spiritual experiences. So this is a curious thing. It was just a path that I was destined to travel. I was open to the Jehovah's Witnesses when they knocked on my door to receiving a book that they offered me, albeit when I was speaking with them, I was discounting everything that they said from a religious perspective, and I was an advocate of science. But I read the book and I took little from it. They came back again 2 weeks later, gave me another book. I read that book and then I spoke with them about it 2 weeks later. Then they gave me a nice leather-bound Bible and I read that in its entirety. I never saw the Jehovah's Witnesses again. But since then, I've been on the path, people, and so it appears that I would suggest that Alex is certainly on the path. After all, like he said, he's took a degree in theology and also in philosophy. So he's a lover of knowledge and he's a deep inquirer into religion and what on earth all that should mean. And so I wanted to bring this to your attention just to show you how having looked into all of those subject matter with the most experienced and brilliant brains on the planet, philosophers like William James, who wrote Varieties of Religious Experience, which is a mega selling book and one that I have on my bookshelf, and one in which there is an experience which one of the pastors had, which was almost identical to my experience, having had Jesus speak to me. And so I'm not a believer. I'm not religious in the slightest. I am a philosopher and a theologist and a theosophist and a spiritualist and an inquirer. I'm inquiring and I'm trying to seek out what on earth it was that I encountered when I encountered angels, Jehovah, Jesus, and the devil himself. So, not to mention all different sorts of entities in the astral and in the entheogenic realm, i.e., when we take DMT. So very, very complex. And so I enjoy watching this guy because, as you can see, exceedingly articulate. The guy there is 20 years old. Can you imagine what he's going to be like when he's 60? So I'll leave that with you. And, let me know what you think about that. Which of course, I should be exhausted by now of saying, because you doubtlessly won't think anything about it. You simply haven't given these things any thought. You aren't on the path and all these sort of things. But I'll keep trying because I believe that there would be one or two of you out there somewhere that could engage with my inquiries.